Hi there, I'm Adrian Palaio and thank you for tuning in. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at azpalaio21. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, azpalaio21, where I play video games and talk a little bit more about MMA. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in and welcome to MMA Monday.
MMA Monday with Adrian Palaio starts now.
Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to MMA Monday. I'm your host, Adrian Palaio. This is our inaugural edition of this podcast where we're going to be talking about the world of MMA, and I am super excited for it, and I hope you guys are as well. We got a lot to talk about. We had a great UFC fight card this past weekend. We had the first ever MMA card live in France. Pretty historic there, and we've got some other things to talk about as well as far as the UFC. So once again, I'm Adrian Palaio. I'm happy I'm able to join you guys, for my inaugural edition of this podcast. I've always been a big fan of MMA, and I'm just happy that I'm able to, start this podcast so I'm able to share my thoughts with the world on the sport that I love the most. All right, so once again, we had Bellator have the first ever fight card in France. Now, the main event featured Michael Venom Page, and he was able to get a win, a very boring decision win over Ross Houston. Now, it's kind of unfortunate for the crowd in France that the first ever card that they, have to see has to be, not that it's an MVP fight, because, MVP is usually a pretty entertaining fighter, but just the fact that it was kind of a boring decision fight like that. We're typically used to MVP doing some crazy stuff, but he ended up grinding out a decision against Ross Houston, a pretty good fighter in his own right, but MVP ending up victorious here, and France gets their first ever fight card. So congrats to them. I'm sure the UFC is going to want to go to France at some point once all the, coronavirus stuff is taken care of and whatnot. I know they got Tom Duquesnoy, who used to fight for the UFC. He was a Frenchman. He had Cyril Diabate back in the day, back in like the 2008, 2009 days of the UFC. He was from France. Cyril Gane. They have another guy right there, Cyril Gane, someone who I believe is fighting next week. I'm going to have to look into that because we are going to be going over next week's card as well. But yeah, France is ripe for the picking as far as MMA talent. So it's going to be interesting to see when the UFC is going to want to dip a little bit more, into that market. All right, so we're going to go ahead in this first episode and just run through, the card that we had this past weekend. We had Marlon Moraes taking on Corey Sandhagen in the main event, a 5-round main event in the bantamweight division. Very important fight in the bantamweight division for a number of reasons. Now let's go ahead and start off with nothing on the main card, but on the prelims. We had an amazing knockout on the prelims. Impa Kasanganay in action against Joaquin Buckley, and just the most insane knockout that you will ever see in a UFC fight, an MMA fight, any fight for that matter. The thing is, Joaquin Buckley goes for a left leg kick. Kasanganay catches it with his left hand, and he's kind of contemplating what he even wants to do, and the moment he kind of hesitates, Buckley instantly with his right foot, which is the free foot, just turns around from his right and hits him with a back kick right in the dome piece, just knocks him out. Kasanganay, his cerebral cortex, his brain up there is functioning sort of, and he's trying to process everything, but he really just goes stiff and he falls backwards. An instant knockout, one of the greatest knockouts that you will ever see in the UFC, and Twitter loved it. I'm sure Joaquin Buckley is going to get a lot of praise for that. It's a very marketable thing to have a knockout like that. I mean, you think back to the Jorge Masvidal knockout of Ben Askren. You think of the Edson Barbosa knockout of Terry Atim. He was also in action this past weekend. I mean, you think of the Anderson Silva knockout of Vitor Belfort, the up kick. It's one of those kind of knockouts that, UFC is going to be using in their pre-event packages, that they like to play with the Who, in the arena. They have the little package that they play in the beginning, all the amazing moments in the UFC. This is one of those kind of knockouts, and it's going to be a very good thing for Joaquin Buckley going forward to have that on his highlight reel, especially coming off a pretty, not an impressive loss, but a tough loss to take against Kevin Holland, who's a middleweight, welterweight in his own right, who's on the rise. And this only makes Kevin Holland look that much better as well. So it's kind of a win-win for those involved. Impa Kasanganay was a really good prospect coming forward, and he looked on his, I don't know if he was on his way to winning that fight, but he was certainly in control of the round up until that point. And he just got caught by Buckley with an amazing knockout back kick. So congratulations to Buckley. Congratulations to Kevin Holland for surely favoring out of that one. All right, our first fight on the main card was between Zalal and Topuria in the featherweight division. In the first round, Topuria, he likes to answer that middle knee because Yusuf Zalal, he's very keen to that knee right up the middle. But Topuria answered it with a nice check hook in the first round. Some grappling going on, but a beautiful Greco-Roman suplex from Topuria, and he just controlled him on the ground for the remainder of that first round. Some really good submission attempts, switched from an anaconda to a guillotine choke. Zalal doing well just to stay alive in that first round. Moving on to the second round, Zalal tries to grapple a little bit more. He's unable to really get anything done there. Another beautiful check hook, and then a rip to the body from Topuria, just not able to really answer anything. Was Zalal. Zalal got cut in the second round, little thing over his eye. He went for a triangle attempt, but he kind of failed. Mounted guillotine. Topuria, he was able to mount Zalal. Nearly got a tight guillotine in, but Zalal was able to get out of it. And after this point, it was clearly 2-0 for Topuria. Third round, double leg takedown for Zalal. Shows early sign of hope. Tries to get in a rear naked choke. Nearly sinks it in, but Topuria did well to get out of it. Guillotine attempt from Zalal, basically the last ditch attempt at a win, did not go through. Topuria was looking for the rear naked choke, was very tired in this third round and lost this third round because of it. He was gassed by the end of it. Topuria ended up on top to end the fight, and the decision went 29-28 unanimously, all three judges for Topuria, winning in the first fight of the main card. Second fight on the main card, Tom Aspinall taking on Badau, the heavyweight. Aspinall, it was very clear in the first round. This guy was the clear premier athlete in this fight. Badau has had some fights in Europe, but easy ground and pound win here for Tom Aspinall after getting a double leg takedown. It seemed, rather elementary for him almost. All right, moving on to the next main card fight, you had Marcus Perez taking on Duplessis, and Duplessis is a former KSW middleweight champion, so you know that they're going to be looking hard on him. He's a good prospect to look forward to here in the middleweight division. And in that first round, Marcus Perez was pressuring hard. He was trying to give Duplessis the business, as you would say. And Duplessis looked nervous. I will tell you that. The octagon jitters were definitely there. He was, kind of just covering up, moving around, kind of just, whoa, like I'm in the UFC. And then Duplessis would rush in, but his chin is straight up. That is going to be something that he needs to fix moving forward. He was gunning in there, but his chin was straight up, and you'll get caught with a check hook if you keep doing that. Perez went for a takedown. He caught a left uppercut as a result. Kind of a check uppercut too. He went for a takedown, boom. Quick little left uppercut, boom. Those are the octagon jitters out of the way right there. So Duplessis getting a big win in his first trip to the octagon. Moving on, we had Big Ben Rothwell in action against Marcin Tybura. in the heavyweight division. First round, Rothwell was pressuring pretty good, landed to the body. Tybura landed a really hard left. Tybura was working in flashes. Ben trying to work to the body, but he definitely looked sloppy. I thought Rothwell took the first round, and I think the judges did too. But the next 2 rounds were purely Marcin Tybura. Very sloppy fight in the second round. And I think Tom Aspinall should ask for the winner of this fight, simply because it looks like a fight that would probably be an easy win for Tom Aspinall. Neither of these two competitors in this heavyweight bout were amazing athletes by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it'd be an easy win for Tom Aspinall. And it's kind of a bigger name as well. So perhaps, and Tybura said he wanted a top 10 opponent, but I doubt that. The way that he looked against Rothwell, wasn't able to finish him off or anything like that. Final scores were 29-27. So they did give a round to Rothwell, but clearly he lost a round via 10-8 there. So we had Tybura taking that decision win. Co-main event was Edson Barbosa as he takes on Makwan Amirkhani. This was all Edson Barbosa. Unbelievable. Edson Barbosa heavy with the leg kicks. We saw him try to do that against Justin Gaethje. Makwan was kind of trying to draw him in, trying to get the counterattack going on in that first round. Kind of a feeling out process, but I definitely thought Edson took the first round, as the judges thought so as well. Big body shot by Edson in the second round, gets a big right hand, nearly gets in an anaconda choke, but Amirkhani, that's his move, so he clearly knows how to get out of it. Edson Barbosa, his takedown defense was amazing in this fight. And say what you will about him getting destroyed by Khabib a couple years ago, but he's definitely worked on his takedown defense, and it definitely showed in this matchup. You know, Amirkhani, a guy who really likes to take it to the ground, use the grappling, use the jiu-jitsu. That was definitely something that he tried to do in this matchup, but he really wasn't able to do so because of Edson Barbosa's really good takedown defense in this fight. A big straight right drops Amirkhani from Barbosa and nearly gets in another anaconda. Makwan barely gets out of it. Third round was all Edson Barbosa. Amirkhani looked tired. He looked sluggish. Barbosa dropped him, I think, 3 times in this round. A beautiful 1-2 ends the fight. Edson ends the fight strong. 3 rounds firmly in his favor. The judges thought the exact same thing, 30-27. I think a couple judges gave it 30-26. He says he wants someone in the top 6. I kind of doubt that's going to happen for him next. I love Edson Barbosa, but I just don't think at this point in time, taking Amirkhani to a decision, I don't think that's necessarily the most impressive win to have on your resume. I mean, I love Edson Barbosa, don't get me wrong. I just don't think at this point in time, a top 10, top 5 opponent is the best idea for him. Give him someone in like the 10 to 12 range. You know what I mean? Keep him out there at featherweight. You know, someone like Dan Ige, I think that'd be a pretty good fight. Oh, did he not just fight Dan Ige? I think he did. I'm not 100% sure. Let me check on that, because I do think he just fought Dan Ige. Yeah, he lost to Dan Ige. But let's see, like he could run back that Paul Felder fight. You know what I mean? I think that'd be a really good idea. Especially considering Paul Felder has been out of action for quite a while as well. I think that'd be pretty good for him. But yeah, definitely not someone in the top 5. Someone within the 10 to 12 range, I think, is good for Edson Barbosa. As long as you're keeping him in action, getting him some money. I love to watch Barbosa fight, so no one loses in that one. As we finally come to our main event of the evening, and it was a good one for as long as it lasted. Marlon Moraes, number 1 in the bantamweight division, taking on Corey Sandhagen, number 4 in the division. Marlon Moraes, of course, having himself a good career, beat Jose Aldo recently in a kind of controversial fight. People thought that Aldo won, and that's kind of why he got the bantamweight title fight in lieu of Moraes. Corey Sandhagen very recently losing to Aljamain Sterling, a young man who should, by all accounts, be fighting for the bantamweight championship pretty soon. Corey Sandhagen gets it done in round number 2. Moraes came aggressive out of the gate, you know, looking for somewhat of a knockout. I don't think he got tired or anything like that. Had a couple really good spinning back fists. Good movement, I will say, from Corey Sandhagen. Was very elusive. A lot of body kicks. Those ones hurt, especially for a chubby guy like me. Like catching that in the liver, that will take you down easily. Catch takedown to end the round by Moraes after a kick didn't go the way of Sandhagen. I thought Moraes took the first round, honestly, but very, very early in the second round, a spinning heel kick from Corey Sandhagen knocks out Marlon Moraes. An amazing finish. Just incredible. Very early in the second round, Moraes was done from the moment it landed. It didn't even land flush. It kind of landed like almost on his temple, and that'll kind of knock you out even a little bit worse than the ones that land flush, because it kind of just throws off equilibrium like right away, and it's a done deal after that, essentially. But Corey Sandhagen, an amazing knockout victory for him. Congratulations to him. Surely moving up in the rankings, just beat the number one guy in the division. But you know what this does? All that this does is further the case that Aljamain Sterling needs to fight for the Bantamweight Championship. I can't believe that we keep having to have this conversation. This man is the number one contender. Give this guy Piotr Jan. I'm sure Jan wants the fight as well. The only thing that I can think of that the UFC would want more than Aljamain Sterling fighting for the title is returning TJ Dillashaw fighting for the title against Piotr Jan, despite the fact that this man, TJ Dillashaw, just tested positive, for PEDs and was suspended as a result of that for 2 years. He's just coming back. And you're going to give him a title shot right out of the gate? I don't think so. Sandhagen calls out Dillashaw or Frankie Edgar. He wants the winner of Jan Sterling should he win his next fight, and I think that does make sense. I like the idea of him fighting TJ Dillashaw. Frankie Edgar, I think he's kind of trying to fight Dominic Cruz. I'm not sure if that's the best fight for him ranking-wise, but it would be an interesting fight to see. But yeah, that was your main card this past weekend in the UFC. Congratulations to Corey Sandhagen, Edson Barbosa, Marcin Tybura, Tom Aspinall, Joaquin Buckley for that amazing knockout. All the best to the people who won this past weekend. So now let's look forward to next week's card. And it's a doozy. I will tell you this. It's interesting because of the main event and the people that are involved in it. The rest of the card, not the strongest necessarily, but let's go through this, starting with the preliminary card. Said Nurmagomedov taking on Mark Striegel. I'd imagine Nurmagomedov takes that one in the bantamweight division. And Tigulov taking on Maxim Grishin in the light heavyweight division. Grishin's a pretty good prospect out of Russia. Jamie Malarkey, cut out all the Malarkey, taking on Moroccan and Faris Zayem. Park Jun-Yong taking on John Phillips. Claudio Silva taking on James Krause. Jillian Robertson making a quick turnaround against Poliana Botello. Mateusz Gamrot, a very good prospect out of KSW, making his debut against Guram Kudataladze. I definitely take Gamrot on that one. He's in the featured prelim, so the UFC's kind of wanting to get a little bit of attention on him. Main card fights, Thomas Almeida taking on Jonathan Martinez. Jimmy Crute taking on Modestas Bakauskas. Pretty important fight in the flyweight division. Caitlin Chukagian taking on Jessica Andrade. Of course, Andrade is coming off the loss to Rose Namajunas. Caitlin Chukagian's coming off a win of her own. Co-main event, I mentioned this man earlier on. Cyril Gane taking on Ante Delija in the co-main event. I think Cyril Gane's got that one in the bag. I think the UFC is trying to build him up. Maybe for a main event in France, perhaps? I think that'd be interesting. And the main event, the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung, taking on Brian Ortega, T-City. The last time we saw T-City was a full 2 years ago against Max Holloway for the featherweight championship. He did lose. Very unfortunate. But he's back in action against the Korean Zombie. You love to see it, seeing him back in action. Korean Zombie having a good showing in his last fight as well. I don't really know what to think of this. If it's standing up, I think Korean Zombie takes it. If Ortega's able to get it to the ground, he might have an advantage. But these guys have some beef for about a good year now. Remember Jay Park, Chan Sung Jung, one of his followers, one of his friends, and a K-pop star, as a matter of fact. Brian Ortega slapped him at UFC 245. I was actually there in the crowd, and I actually ran into him in the arena. And then later on to find out that he got slapped by Brian Ortega, I was like, wait, what? Crazy. If I had to make a guess, I'd probably say Korean Zombie, unanimous decision. But that will be a very, Very fun fight to watch. Some other things we're looking forward to 2 weeks from now, or 2 Saturdays from now, I should say. We got UFC 254, a great pay-per-view with a great main event. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 28-0, taking on Justin Gaethje to unify the lightweight championship of the world. Co-main event, a very important one as well, basically a title eliminator for the middleweight championship. Robert Whittaker taking on Jared Killer-Gorilla Cannonier. Love that matchup. Alexander Volkov taking on Walt Harris, amongst other fights. Also moving on, we have Uriah Hall taking on Anderson Silva on Halloween, Saturday, October 31st, in what is expected to be Anderson Silva's retirement fight. All right. So a lot of news going on. This was the inaugural edition of MMA Monday. I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. Stay tuned for next week as we go over Korean Zombie against Ortega. Next week, I'll have a little bit more news prepared for you, a little bit more rumors and whatnot. Just wanted to get this inaugural episode out of the way. I thank you guys. Like you heard in the intro, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at azpalayo21. My YouTube channel is azpalayo21 if you want to come check out some other stuff, MMA, or maybe some video games. This has been MMA Monday. I'm Adrian Palayo. You guys have a good rest of your week.